Hello and good morning, everybody, and welcome to this Theatre Project Award funding clinic. I hope you're all well this morning. We're using a slightly different format today. We're using a webinar function in Zoom. So I can't see any friendly faces, but I assume you're all out there and you're very welcome and thanks for joining us. For those that don't know me, I'm David Parnell and I'm the Arts Council's Head of Theatre. For those that do know me, hello, how's it going? Hope you're well. And joining me on the call today is Patrick Meehan, who is our theatre team assistant. This is Patrick's first theatre clinic with the theatre team, so a very big welcome to him. And Maeve Giles, who many of you are familiar with, the theatre officer, and B. Kelleher, the theatre support manager. I just want to, before I get into this, acknowledge the work of the theatre team, which is, as always, fantastic. And you know that the theatre team is always there to assist with any questions or queries you might have ahead of the application deadline. So without further ado, I will crack on with the presentation. So I'm going to speak to these slides for about 25 minutes. What you can do is if you have any questions as you go along, you can pop them into the Q&A function, which you should be able to see there. And at the end, we'll take those questions. Patrick will read through them and we can answer your questions at the end. Okay, so let's make a start. This is Theatre Project Award Round 2 2025. And what I'm going to talk about today is, the first thing to mention, and I'll mention this again, is that this award is only for strands 1 and 2 of the award. So I'll talk a little bit about strands 1 and 2. I'll talk about where you can find the guidelines document. I'll talk about the guidelines. I'll talk about supporting materials. I'll talk about the budget template, a little bit about the application form, and then I'll give you some tips and also some common mistakes to avoid. And lastly, where you can find information on all available funding. The first thing and the most important thing is the deadline, which is 17:30 on Thursday, the 21st of November, which is Ireland time. So it's important to, if you're applying from outside Ireland and the time difference is different, make sure you're applying before 5:30 p.m. in Ireland. Okay, and this is for activities that are commencing on or after the 1st of July 2025. So do not list any activities. Do not list any activities in your application form that commence before this date. This is for activities commencing after the 1st of July, on or after the 1st of July 2025. So Strand 1, the objectives of Strand 1 is to support the development of new plays written by a single author. Now, it may not in every case be a single author. It could be the joint authorship, but generally it's a single author and generally it's a playwright writing a play. Strand 2 is to enable the collaborative creation of new theatre work for the stage for future production or presentation. So Strand 2 is more about making theatre in a collaborative sense, where a number of people might work together in a room over a period of time to develop ideas. And that may be through improvisation, through devising, it may be through researching pre-existing text, it may be documentary theatre, maybe something like that. So it's where the imperative or the starting point is not necessarily a script, but is more likely to be just an idea or an impulse for the excavation and creation of a new piece of theatre. As I've said, only strands 1 and 2 are available for this round. So this really is about the development of work. How much you can apply for. So for strand 1, you can apply for up to 15,000, and for strand 2, you can apply for up to 26,000. Now, important to say, you may only apply under one strand, and you must clearly identify which strand you're applying for in section 1.3 of the application form. So when you get to the application form, it asks you what strand, so you're applying either under strand 1 or strand 2. If you're not quite sure what strand is most suitable for you, then just get in touch and ask us, and we'll have a chat and we'll try and help you if we can. So where to find the funding information? I know a lot of this will be familiar to many of you, so please bear with me. If you know all this, you know all this, but just in case you don't or you're not too familiar, this is to help you navigate. So the best and easiest place to go is to the Arts Council's website. And at the top of the website, on the menu across the top, there is a funding button, which you can click on, and that will give you a drop-down menu, which will include available funding. And from there, it will bring you to the available funding page. And that starts with what our current funding, what's currently available. But if you scroll down that page, you will see other awards that are upcoming. So there is the Theatre Project Award. Now you'll notice at the moment the button that you press to apply is yellow because it isn't open yet. It opens next week. So you can't actually make an application yet. That will start next week. But once it does turn green, it will say that. It will say accepting applications. And you can either click on the Theatre Project Award button or the accepting applications button, and it will bring you to the Theatre Project Award page. So this is the page live as it is currently. So you can see that currently you can't apply. But what you can do is you can download. So this is what it looks like when you can apply. But what you can do from there is you can download the guidelines. Now, this image is from last year, so please ignore this. But you'll be downloading the latest version of the guidelines. And the guidelines look like this. They're essentially a Word document in PDF format. And they give you all the information you need to make an application. It's really important, and I will say this again, it's really important that you read the most up-to-date version of the guidelines. We make changes in guidelines every year, and I know this causes frustration for people, and we do appreciate that. But what tends to happen is that every year at every round, some issue comes up, and then we do our best to try and clarify that issue for people, to try and make it clearer where we can if there's any kind of room for um, room for what's the word I'm looking for? I guess where there's some doubt about the clarity of what something might say or something might mean, we do our best to clarify that. So that's why they do change slightly every year. So it's really important that you read the latest version of the guidelines. Really useful thing to say, the guideline starts with a contents page, but the very first thing in there is a page called Key Points to Remember, and that's a really useful thing to go back to. So obviously it gives some information about the application process, but most importantly, it gives a checklist at the end of the first page. And I think it's really useful to go back to that as often as you can. So I have read and understood these guidelines. If there's anything you don't understand, get in touch. Please feel free to get in touch. I think sometimes people feel maybe a bit either intimidated or a bit, oh, I'll sound a bit foolish. Just if you have a question, ask. That's what we're here to help with. So please, if you have a question, please don't be afraid to reach out to us and ask the question. It may be a really obvious answer. You may find yourself going, oh, yes, okay, now I see that. But if you have a question, just ask it. In the event that I have had an issue, I've contacted the Arts Council for assistance. That's what the second thing says. If I filled out all the sections relevant to of the application form relevant to my application, I've prepared all required supporting material as set out, and I've asked someone else to check over my application to make sure there are no errors and nothing is missing. So those are the kind of key pieces of advice, but that's probably the most important one. I have prepared all required supporting material as set out in these guidelines, and I have this ready to upload. That's the most common reason why people are deemed ineligible, is because they have missed out a piece of supporting material. Again, we do understand that it's quite it can be quite involved and it can be quite stressful pulling together supporting documents, but that's the thing that you need to pay an awful lot of attention to, just to make sure you have everything. And again, if you have any questions or queries, just get in touch. So what the guidelines say, apart from that opening section about those key points to remember, it sets out the objective and priorities of the award. It tells you who can apply. It tells you who cannot apply. It tells you what you may apply for and what you may not apply for. It tells you what supporting materials you must include. It talks about eligibility. It describes the application process, and it describes how we assess your application. So there's a lot of detail in those guidelines. So I would suggest you start reading them as soon as possible if you haven't already. Now, here's a top tip, which is the word must appears in the guidelines quite a few times. So a useful trick is to just check where it says must, because where it says must, you must do something. And it's almost always because a person didn't do something they must do that they are deemed ineligible. So it's really useful to check, make a note for yourself where it says must, and make sure you do that. So within the guidelines, there's a definition of theatre that we have, which is dramatic or post-dramatic work. I suppose the point being that it's based in drama, that there's drama in there, that it's performed in person by actors in front of a live audience in the same space or location. The same space or location doesn't have to be a conventional theatre space. It might be an outdoor show. It might be a site-specific show. It might be a show in a upstairs in a pub or in someone's house, doesn't really matter. The point is it's happening live in front of an audience. And that definition includes things like the things on the right, like radio plays and audio drama not being performed, or recording a podcast, or performance art, or public interviews, or stand-up comedy, or spoken word, or slam poetry, or any type of filmed or videoed performance that's not performed in front of a live audience. So that's just to really help you frame your thinking in terms of the kind of work you want to make. Again, if you have any questions about that, get in touch with us. So again, what the guidelines say, who cannot apply. Now, there has been a change to this year, so I think it's really important that I spend a moment on this. Who cannot apply are organizations currently in receipt of funding under the main grant programs, which is strategic funding, Arts Centre funding, or partnership funding. So mainly that's production companies, art centres, festivals, and local authorities. But the involvement of those organizations as partners is welcome. So if you're going out to look for the support of a festival or a venue or an art centre, whatever the case may be, you should go ahead and do that. They just can't be the named applicant. And organisations or individuals that have been awarded 2025 arts grant funding also can't apply. Members of the Council of National Cultural Institutions, directly funded by the Department of Arts, individuals and organisations that do not have a demonstrable track record as professional artists or organisations, individuals currently in undergraduate education, or individuals seeking support towards the fees for postgraduate education. So that's who cannot apply. Now, yeah, so under who cannot apply, there's been a slight change this year, which is that full-time employees of organisations funded through Strategic and Arts Centre funding are eligible to apply, but they must apply. They can either be the applicant or be part of an application. Such individuals may apply or be part of an application once the activities for which they are seeking are not usually undertaken by their employer, or not financially beneficial to their employer, and do not represent a conflict of interest with their employer. So in the event that you're successful, you'll be required to submit evidence of this in the form of a signed letter on headed paper from your employer. This may be the chief exec in some cases, or it may be the chair of your board as appropriate. So the point is, if you're a full-time employee of an Arts Council funded organisation, you can either be an applicant or part of an applicant, as long as that has nothing to do with the work that you're doing as a full-time employee, if that makes sense. Okay. Again, any questions by that, let us know. So what supporting materials must you include? So in all cases, in order to be considered eligible, you must submit the following. From each individual named in your proposal, we require an up-to-date CV or biog and a letter of email of confirmation outlining the nature of the collaboration, that they've agreed the financial terms of their involvement, and that the planned outcomes are understood and agreed. So essentially, anybody you're working with and anybody you name within the application form that is part of this application, you must provide a CV for them, and you must provide a letter or email of confirmation that they are happy to be involved. That's really important. I mean, obviously, in terms of the CV or biog, because we may not know the individual or we may not know them well, so we need to be able to assess their track record and their qualification. But also the letter of email of confirmation means that you've had a conversation with this person and this person is interested in working with you on this project. Now, we do accept and understand that these emails are speculative at the point of application. We do accept and understand that this, first of all, you may not get the funding. Second of all, the person, it may not work out for them. The timing may not work out for them in the end. But the point is, at the point of application, you've had the conversation with them, and all things being equal, they want to work with you on this and they're happy to commit to it. So that's what that's there for, so that we have a sense that those conversations have taken place and that those collaborators are committed, at least in principle, to the thing. Where there is the support from an organisation in your application, then you must provide a letter or email of support or a copy of an MOU outlining the details or the terms of the co-production, or confirming any commitments in either cash or in kind. Obviously, in the case of strands 1 and 2, it won't be about co-production so much as it'll be about helping you develop a piece of work. But the point is that whatever support they're offering you, that it's evidenced. And particularly if they're offering cash or in-kind income, that's evidence, because that will be part of your budget. And you can feel free to also include background information on the organisation if it's not one with which the Arts Councils like to be familiar. Obviously, if it's an Arts Council funded production company or festival or art centre, we're going to know those people anyway, and we're going to know that organisation. So we probably don't need much biographical information about the organisation, but we do need the MOU. We do need the letter of support. And as we say there, any individuals at number one, any individuals named in your proposal must be listed and organizations must be listed at question 2.8 of the application form. Next, under supporting materials, you must include a completed theatre project budget template. And you can download this from the funding page, which I'll go back to in a minute. And I will also talk about the project template. And at least one and no more than 3 samples demonstrating previous work relevant to the proposed project. Ultimately, it's up to you as the applicant to decide what is a piece of previous work relevant, but the more relevant to the proposed project, the better. So if you're looking to develop a new piece of work, then you need to try and find at least 3 examples that you feel can really help enhance and support your application. Important to say, if you're applying as a playwright under strand 1, then you must provide a writing sample of something you've written for theatre before. It doesn't have to have been professionally produced, but you must at least provide a writing sample so that we can make an assessment on the work. Okay, there is a note here on public engagement, but this isn't actually relevant because you're not likely to be engaging the public for strands 1 and strand 2. But if you are, or if you're interested, there is information on public engagement on the Arts Council's website. So it's useful to know that that's there anyway. So back to the Theatre Project Award funding page, and there is, as I mentioned, the Theatre Project Award budget template. So you download it from there, from the funding page. And it comes in 3 sections. And again, I know a lot of you will be familiar with this, so please bear with me. But again, there's probably no harm in rehearsing it anyway. So tab 1 is the budget detail, the income and expenditure. Tab 2 is where you list any in-kind income. And tab 3 is a summary. You don't actually have to enter any data into tab 3. It does it automatically. But the summary then is the basis on which we would, if your funding is successful, that's the basis on which we would then track how your income and expenditure went in the end. So those are the 3. Sorry, this is the first tab, the budget detail. It runs to 3 pages, but obviously when you're looking at it in an Excel document, it will just run straight down. It is quite detailed, but it's important to say, and we do say this at the instructions at the top, that you only need to fill in the sections that are relevant to your application. So if you're applying under strand 1, and really it's just you want to spend some time writing a play, and then you want to maybe work with a director and or a dramaturg and or some actors in a room, then that's it. That's what you're doing. So please don't feel over intimidated by this. It is quite a detailed budget template. It is designed to cover everything from the beginning of writing a play to a full production. So there's an awful lot in here that won't be relevant for strands 1 and strand 2. Don't worry about that. Just fill in what you need to fill in. Also, again, any questions at all, just get in touch. So as we say, cells need to be filled in only where relevant to your proposal. Also to say, on the right, there is a comment section. So if you want to explain how you've arrived at a figure or what your rationale was for putting in a particular figure, you can explain it there. So that helps us to understand how you came up to a certain with a certain figure. So the first thing is the numbers, which is the number of cast, the number of stage management, the number of freelance personnel, the number of weeks of production development, the number of weeks of rehearsal, the number of performance weeks, number of performances. Again, the bottom 3 won't really be relevant for strands 1 and 2. What that does is it allows the template to make the calculations based on the number of people involved and the number of weeks development, as the case may be. Then you've got any non-box office income, so any income you have coming in to your proposal. Again, for strands 1 and 2, that may not be a lot because you're not charging box office, for example, but any support you're getting, you can put in there. Now, it's important to say this is cash. This is actual money that will come to you. This is not income in kind. Income in kind, you would fill in the second tab, and that will automatically be populated in the tab in the template. And there it is there, the value of income in kind. So you would fill that into the next tab, and then that would populate in here. And that gives you your total income. Then you've got cost of sales. Again, this won't be relevant for applications that are not about production. And then you've got your expenditure. So you've got your fees to your collaborators, as the case might be, and you've got your wages if you're paying wages to cast and crew. Then you've got technical costs. Again, there won't be many technical costs for strands 1 and 2, but there may be some, depending on what kind of work you're doing. Promotion and publicity almost certainly won't be relevant to strands 1 and 2. but again, it may be. And then you've got administration costs. Again, any questions on any of this? And lastly, you've got travel and accommodation. This is for productions playing in more than one venue, but there may be some travel and accommodation depending on who you're working with, where they're based, whether somebody's coming from somewhere else, or whether you need to move around for the purpose. And lastly, there's access costs. Now, it's really important to say there's a line in there about access costs. Access costs is about mainly about, in the case of strands 1 and 2, it's about artist access costs. So if you have artists working with you who have access needs, whatever they may be, you need to provide a separate document to set out what those costs are, and then you would put that in there. The reason for that is because we have a separate budget for artist access costs, so we know that we can call on that if it's required as part of an application. And then the budget detail will work all this out, and the funding amount requested will be worked out automatically. And that's how we know how much you're asking for. This is the in-kind income tab that I talked about. This is the second tab. So you would give details of what they might be. For example, cost of sales, for example, fees, for example, wages, for example, technical costs, etc. You would agree with your partners, whoever you're working with, if they're giving you, so if let's say your local art center is giving you the use of a space or rehearsal room to work in, you would put the value of that in there, and that will be calculated as a part of your budget. And again, it's really important to provide the MOU or letter of support that evidences that support. And lastly, there's a summary. And as I said, that will be filled out automatically. So anything you put in tabs 1 and tabs 2 will come in here automatically. And that's the basis of the funding agreement. So if you're successful, we will ask you then, as you can see, we will ask you then to revise that at the point of drawing down funding if you need to. And then we will ask you to, at the end of the process, give us the actuals, what actually happened. And that's really useful for us for a number of reasons. But it's mainly about us being able to track data and be able to track the income and so the impacts of our investments. But also from a case making point of view, it's really useful and important for us to have data around the kind of fees people are being paid, the costs of rehearsal spaces, the nuts and bolts of making work. It's really useful for us to have all of that really good detail, because it means we can be really confident when we're assessing that these costs are genuine and real. And we know they're going up as well, by the way. We know that inflation has been crazy over the last couple of years, although it's coming down. So we're aware that the cost of doing everything is going up all the time. So a general note about paying yourself and other artists: the amount you propose to pay yourself and any other mentors or collaborators that you might have working with you should be commensurate with yours and their career stage, the nature of your practice, and the duration of the proposal. Fees should be appropriate to industry standards within the theatre sector. You should pay yourself appropriately. Do not request less than you need to achieve your objectives, and do not assume that asking for less will increase your chances of funding. And there is further available info from the likes of Theatre Forum, or what's now called Performing Arts Forum, and the Irish Theatre Institute. So if you have any questions on that, by all means, go and talk to them, or just talk to maybe a slightly more senior artist who you know, who might be able to advise you on this. But I think a common mistake is that people think, well, if I ask for less, maybe that increases my chances. That is absolutely not the case. It costs what it costs, and you need to pay yourself properly for your time. So it's important that you don't undersell yourself or undervalue your own time as part of this application, because ultimately that will undermine the feasibility. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, in addition to the maximum amount, the Arts Council will also consider access costs specifically relating to the making of work by artists or participants. There's a key change, which is that public access costs are no longer allowable as additional costs. They must come from within your overall budget, but that's not really going to be relevant for strands 1 and 2 because there isn't generally a public outcome. You may be doing an industry reading, you may be doing a reading for kind of friends and collaborators, but you're not going to be presenting to the public, so it doesn't really arise. But if you want more information on access, you can go to our Equality, Diversity and Inclusion team, and they can help you, and we have an access officer as well. So if you have any questions on that, but you can contact us first and we can pass you on anyway, as the case may be. So back to the application process and online services. So again, back in the Arts Council website, you'll see at the top menu, there's a button for online services. Click on that, it brings you to the online services website. Again, I'm aware a lot of you will be familiar with this, but if you're not, make sure you go there now. And if you are not already a user, make sure you sign up. So that's where you would sign up if you are a new user. But if you're not a new user, you would enter your ARN password and you would go in and it will bring you to your home page. And that's where you can make an application. If you're already working on an application or you have previous applications, that will be in the My Applications tab. But if you make an application, it will bring you to, well, first it will ask you to confirm you are who you are. So you confirm you are who you are. And then it will bring you to the choose a funding program. So any funding programs that are live will be available here. So once the Theatre Project Award goes live, you will see that and you can click on funding and you can, from the drop-down menu, choose Projects Award Theatre. And you can also choose the available strand. Now, in this round, strand 2 theatre projects, as far as I'm aware, I'm pretty sure only theatre is offering a round 2 projects. So you probably will only see, the only project award you will see will be theatre. But just in case, make sure you click theatre, the project award for theatre, because that's what will allow you to choose the strands. And from there, you will download the application form. Now, at any point, you can save where you're at. You can go back or you can go on, but it means if you want to stop and go away and come back, if you save it, it will pick it up where you left off. Application form looks like this. Again, it's a Word document. Again, we're aware that there are some technical, let's say, quirks about this, which means that it doesn't necessarily work with the most up-to-date version of OpenOffice. So, I mean, obviously it's designed for Word. So if you have Word, that's the best thing to use. Or if you don't have Word, if you can borrow someone's computer who does have Word, it's probably the simplest way to do it. But if you have any technical problems at all, please get in touch in plenty of time. So the application form has a number of sections and questions. The first part is general information, which is where you'll give your name, where you will declare that you've read and understood the guidelines, where you will nominate what strand you're applying for, and also where you will take additional art forms. Now you're applying under theatre, so your application will automatically come into the theatre queue. So you don't need to take theatre again under additional art forms. But if particularly on the strand 2, if it's very much a collaboration with another art form like dance or film or music, you would tick that there as well. And that allows us to be able to make to ask those other relevant teams for an assessment if we require them. You're also asked to confirm whether or not you're working with children or vulnerable adults, and also to declare if you're happy for us to contact you about other Arts Council business. So the second section then is asks for the title of your proposal, a bit of biographical information about yourself. That's really important because that piece of information goes to the panel. So when the applications are assessed and those that are shortlisted go to a panel, that's where you get to kind of talk about yourself to the panel. So it's a useful section in the application form. Then you're asked to give a brief 3 bullet point summary of your proposal, then the details of your proposal, a section on paying conditions, a section on the paying conditions for, the application and the assessment criteria. So this is where you can argue how you believe your proposal meets the objectives and priorities of the award. So that's where you get the point, you get to say how you believe your proposal meets those priorities. Then you're asked to list the key activities and you're asked to list the key personnel, or all the personnel involved in your proposal. So this is the important section. The details of your proposal. This is where you get to set out the what, the how, and the why. And I suppose in a way, the kind of tip we always offer people is that this is the bit you need to kind of work on and rehearse and draft and work again and maybe get someone to read it for you. There's no requirement or necessity or obligation to use highfalutin language or fancy terminology or anything like that. It's just really about you expressing as clearly and as simply as you can what the thing is you want to make, how you're going to go about doing it, and why you think it's important, why you think that this will be of value, of interest, of relevance to people potentially, what the thing is about that maybe speaks to the contemporary moment, as the case may be, or why you think it will be, an important piece of art. And really, it's when those three things are in balance, when there's a clear sense of what the idea is, how the idea is going to work, and why the artist wants to do that. Those are the applications that tend to be the most compelling when they come to a panel. It's about focusing on each of those things. Sometimes we see something that it's a great idea, but there's no real sense of why the artist wants to do it. Or they've got great collaborators, but there's no clear sense of what the thing is. So it's about getting those three things in balance. If there is a secret, that's the secret. This is, apologies, this is a slightly old slide. So under the key activities, it says there, do not put anything here before the 1st of January. That should say the 1st of July. So do not put any activities before the 1st of July, 2025. Then at the end of the application form, there's a brief overview of your expenditure and income. Again, the budget template is mandatory. So all you're really doing here is putting a very high level version of your expenditure in there. It doesn't have to be super detailed because the detail is in the budget template. Lastly, there's a supporting material checklist in the application form. And so you need to check this list again. Now, there are two things that are not relevant in this case. A basic or detailed project plan is not required under theatre. And obviously you won't need an audience marketing or dissemination plan in this case because it's strands 1 and 2. So it's about the development of work. But just make sure you check that checklist and make sure you're happy that you've got everything there that you need to have. So once you've filled in your application form and you're happy, once you've read your guidelines, then you go back to the funding page and you click next and it brings you to the amount requested section. So here you would fill in your amount requested. Your total income is the total income apart from the amount requested. So the income other than Arts Council funding. And so the total expenditure should be the sum of those two above. So the amount requested is the difference between your expenditure and your income because that's the subsidy you're looking for. Then on the next page, you'll be brought to your upload page. So you will upload your application form and upload your supporting material. And you then will be asked to review your application form. Now you will see here in this slide that I created, it says you may not submit an application until you've uploaded your application form. So when I was creating this image, I hadn't uploaded an application form yet. So it's helping me, telling me that I haven't done that. And also it tells me I haven't uploaded any supporting documents and this may result in your application being rejected. Well, I can tell you it will result in your application being rejected if you don't upload any supporting documents. But again, just try and be really careful as you can that you've got all the supporting documents that you need. Once you're happy, you've uploaded the application form, you've uploaded the supporting documents, then you are declaring that you've read the guidelines and you certify the information in this application is correct to the best of your knowledge and your profile details are up to date, and then you would submit your application. So once your application is in the assessment process, we check your applications for eligibility. I've just mentioned there about supporting documents. Also, it may be that you've applied for the wrong award or something like that. All eligible applications then go forward for assessment, and we assess under 3 criteria, which are really the standard criteria for all Arts Council applications, which is the artistic quality, the extent to which it meets the priorities award, and the feasibilities. And applications that are deemed to meet those criteria are then shortlisted and sent to a peer panel for the final deliberations. The panel is made up of professional practitioners and is chaired by a member of the Arts Council. So the panel is usually people working in the theatre business. Usually we try and have a mix of disciplines. So we might have a playwright, we might have a director, we might have an actor, we might have a producer, we might have a designer. So we have different kind of perspectives brought to bear. We also try and make sure that there's a range of people from around the country, so it's not all centered on one particular place. And we try and get a range of experiences as well. So there's maybe slightly more senior people and maybe slightly younger and more emerging people. So there's between the panel, they have a good overview of the theatre ecology. So some tips. Ensure, as I've said, that you've read the latest version of the guidelines. Ensure that you're happy applying for the right award. If in any doubt, contact us. Any doubt at all, please, please, please feel free to contact us. And most important, give yourself plenty of time. And that is the first of the common mistakes to avoid, which is not giving yourself enough time to prepare and upload, not reading the guidelines carefully or assuming you know them, not uploading all the required supporting materials, not checking any technical specifications well ahead of the deadline, not giving yourself enough time to register if you're a first-time applicant. So if you are a first-time applicant, just register today. Just do that. Not demonstrating feasibility regarding paying the artist, including yourself as an applicant. That quite often comes up where, like I said before, a person thinks, well, if I pay myself less, that gives me a better chance. Actually, that undermines the feasibility. So don't make that mistake. And also then asking for either too much or too little for the award. So make sure that you're within the band available. So lastly, where to find information. Again, This is a general thing, but again, on the website under the available funding section, you can find information not just about the upcoming project award, but all upcoming deadlines are there. So you can see what's happening. You can also sign up to our newsletter if you haven't done that already. There's a monthly newsletter which gives updates on grants awards, as well as news and events and arts policy. And you can also follow us on social media. I don't pretend to be an expert in social media, but I gather we're on all the usual platforms, whatever they may be. So that will send you notifications if there's any news or any information. Finally, where to contact us. So the best, simplest, easiest, and most convenient way to contact us is through the Arts Council's, through the theatre@artscouncil.ie email address. That goes to the whole team, but it means that at least somebody will see that email regardless of who's in or out or away at meetings or whatever the case may be. But if you want to talk to anybody, then Patrick is the first point of contact and he will be very happy to direct you. The other thing to say, though, is before you even get to Patrick, if you ring reception, um, our receptionists are really, really experienced and really knowledgeable and really excellent. So if you ring reception and you have a particular question about something, there's a very strong likelihood that they'll be able to answer the question before you even need to get to Patrick. But then there's Patrick, there's Maeve, there's Bea, who is our very capable and brilliant support manager, and she is responsible for all things projects. And my name is there, but don't contact me because I will just put you back to somebody else. But obviously I'm here, and if required, if there's questions that need some thinking or some thought that we all need to put our heads together on. And lastly, to say, finally, please, please, please let us know when you have a production on. Give us plenty of notice and we will do our best to get along. We really do really try and see as much work as we can. I think between myself, Bea, and Sarah, our advisor, we see literally hundreds of shows every year. But we do need notice because our diaries are generally filled up between 4 and 6 weeks in advance. So if you're going into production, if you're starting the first day of rehearsal, please let us know the show is coming so that we're aware. Just a little anecdote here. We're aware from journalist colleagues of ours that journalists sometimes get notice of shows way ahead of time because if you're working with a PR person, the PR person knows to contact the journalists. So maybe someone involved in your production should just make a note to contact the Arts Council at the same time, because if we can get that much notice, it makes it that much easier for us to make sure we see the work. And that is it. Thank you very much. So we are going to stop the recording now.